So, Napoli is the big story because, of course, as we all know, Carlo Ancelotti has indeed been sacked, despite the fact that they managed a 4-0 victory over Genk, and they were splendid. It's been 9 games without a win up until that glorious victory in the Champions League. So we know Napoli are through, at least then, in European competition. It's in the league that they're somewhat suffering. And some people say it's the right decision. We've obviously spoken at length about whether or not, the mutiny had anything to do with it. The fact that perhaps he might have felt betrayed by some of these players, that some of these players have all these contractual issues that's making life very difficult at a dressing room level. So what do you think? Do you think, firstly, what I really want to know is this the right decision?
No.
It's a bad decision to sack him.
No, I wrote a whole column about this. Now, what bugs me here a little bit is I think people are misconstruing why he went, right? People have come up with, look, De Laurentiis is mad, he's an egomaniac. People will say, it was a fallout with the players, which it really, except for Insigne, it really isn't. There's no issue between Ancelotti and the players. What it was he made a very simple calculation. I mean, he's a guy who... De Laurentiis, yeah. He's a guy who looks at the numbers. I wrote a whole column about this. We can go into this in more detail. But long story short, he looked at this and he said, okay, so I've got all these players whose contracts are expiring and I need to, either this year or next, and they're up for renewal. I will keep them all if I have the money, if I know that money is coming in. People remember, De Laurentiis, effectively Napoli is his main business in terms of how much revenue he gets in. He has a film production company, that's his background, but he's not exactly, he's not the guy from Suning. He's not Abramovich, right? So Napoli basically have to be profitable every year, and they have been, in part because he keeps his costs down. So he spent big in the summer on Manolas and Di Lorenzo and Rzouki Lozano, but his thing was, I can only maintain this if I know that I have a guaranteed 40 to 60 million group stage money coming in next season. And I think his big fear or his concern was, we are, 7 points out in Serie A? We're in 7th place. Once we get going into the new year, when the Champions League comes up, we start advancing the Champions League, there's going to be pressure on me to either extend contracts or to spend more money to bring in players. And the marginal gain of staying in the Champions League, if he gets to the quarterfinal, they get an extra 10 to 12 million. Semifinals are going to be more, but it's highly unlikely that they're going to go all the way to the final. The marginal gain financially of me being there really isn't that big relative to the chances of catching up in Serie A and finishing top 4. I think I might do that with Ancelotti, but I also think my chances are better with somebody like Gattuso because he's cheaper. Because if I tell Gattuso, focus on the league, get us back up in the league, he's going to do that because he doesn't have the gravitas to go and put pressure on me to go and make more signings. And I think that was the real driving logic behind it. I think it's a wrong logic, personally, but that is what drove it. That, and then obviously the fact that he felt ultimately humiliated because you had this mutiny, and even though Ancelotti was kind of neutral in it, Ancelotti and his staff were the only people who went to the training ground, he felt that, you should have sided with me more. You should have been, you should have cracked down on the players, the same players that I'm suing, by the way, and been even more aligned with me. And that hurt him. He took, obviously, the fight with his son, between his son and some of the players as well. He took that very personally, which to some degree is understandable. And that is why we're in this position. That is why Ancelotti is no longer the Napoli manager. It's a savings issue, basically.
Okay, so just before I come to you, Nicky, so basically what you're saying is that, it's cost effective considering, firstly, Ancelotti's on 9 million. Do you think that, I guess the question is that it makes sense what Gab is saying, obviously, and that is what it seems like it is.
It doesn't. It makes sense to De Laurentiis. It doesn't make sense to me.
I know. I'm saying it makes sense in the
like
sense that
as
a business decision, if you're running this as a...
It's not just an emotional decision that he made because he's mad, like the time he...
No, I think you've nailed it. And,
he acts crazy, but he's not crazy.
Exactly. I think that's a really important point.
Does he realize that he's the reason why he has had to come down to this decision?
In what sense?
Like, as in, okay, let's just say he didn't have this player mutiny, that he didn't get angry with it, and then put the situation in such a manner in which everyone is being fined. Alan and Senior and Dries or whoever it is don't feel like the club hasn't been grateful to how much they've given, you know? Is this a case of, like, you know, that fallout, which led to, unfortunately, Ancelotti being in the middle of it, just didn't actually jolt the club back up, but it ruined them?
Yeah, you're asking, does De Laurentiis
learn from his mistakes?
Learn from his mistakes?
Yeah.
Possibly not. I mean, you know, he's not exactly been shy of going through managers. I think probably the one manager where there was, for a time, like a sort of real feeling of synergy was probably with Benitez, I felt like, for a while.
I think the first season with Ancelotti too.
Yeah. Well, I think there's been periods.
Yeah.
And I think there was definitely, like, even in the press conference to introduce Gattuso, there felt like a little bit of still hankering after Sarri and the football that Sarri gave him for that best year, particularly together. And he, you know, even alluded to it with his cheesy Ringhio star, as he was calling Gattuso, and saying, oh, well, Gattuso wanted to come here because he saw us playing this football. Which, you know, the reality is
Gattuso will never play except on the PlayStation.
Well, like, I mean, Gattuso...
No, he might be successful, but he'll play a different type of football.
Gattuso wanted the job because it's a great job for someone who hasn't really done that much yet in management. I mean, it's, you know, it's an obvious job for Gattuso to take, a big opportunity, and I have a lot of, you know, I suppose my first sort of instant hesitancy on all this, because you know, everyone who listened to this podcast heard me and Gab butting heads last week, but I've read the column and I think I agree with basically everything you've written on this, Gab. I think you're exactly spot on.
We've both read the column.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the the bit that I'm struggling with from the De Laurentiis side of it, you know, I like you, Gab. I don't really agree with the decision. I think it's a massive shame, given that the one thing that really was going right for Napoli under Ancelotti was the Champions League. It's a massive shame not to find out what this team would have done with him.
Exactly. And I think we need to always keep sight of this, that this is a sport. You know, you're doing this to try and win things. This is an absurdity that now getting back in the Champions League is more important than round of 16 trying to advance.
But this is what I wanted to come to, is that whilst I agree that if, you know, you're looking at this in your De Laurentiis, the money it's costing you, you could have plenty of reasons to feel uncertain about finishing in the top four with Ancelotti the way things are going. I don't know that I particularly believe Gattuso is going to fix that for you. Yeah. I understand the idea, like, okay, this guy's going to be what Ancelotti isn't, in that he's more of a hammer, he's more of a shout at the players and knock them into line kind of guy.
No, but if you're not going to qualify,
is he a good enough manager?
He's going to be cheaper.
Well, yes.
I think that's kind of what Ancelotti's going to get paid up through the end of the season. It's going to cost them about €4.5 million to go and do that. But then next season, Gattuso's going to be cheaper if he sticks around, right?
He's going to be like best.
I
but
think
then the money that you can make. Okay, so Gattuso, you save the money now, right?
Yeah.
You're saving money for next season as well. So 9 million. You have to pay 5 now anyway to Ancelotti. Yeah. And then you're saving money next year. I don't know how much Gattuso will be on, but let's just say you're saving 8 or 7 million. Yeah. So that's 8 or 7 million. Right. You go into the Champions League with, I don't know, with Gattuso at the helm and no longer Carlo Ancelotti. Are you going to pull off these wins that will qualify you the way that Ancelotti has managed over Liverpool? So then you're losing money in that way as well.
But you're not really, because if you qualify, you're still guaranteed 40 to 60 million. You're going to have a high seed because you've qualified again, so you're still going to be a 2 seed.
Okay.
So, you know, look, you don't.
But even
the future's not been but also you can, as a businessman, I mean, you can go and you can then have the excuse of, you know, you sell Callejon and Mertens in January, you sell Allen and Koulibaly in the summer, probably his side too, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've made like 150 million, and you can say, all right, now we're going to rebuild the team for Gattuso, and you can use that excuse if you fail to reach the top 4, or even if you do qualify for the top 4, right? I think this is how he's thinking. And the reality behind this, and people always lose sight of this, is Napoli's turnover is like between 200, 250 million. Weirdly, Napoli's turnover outside of prize money hasn't really grown in the last 6 or 7 years. And he hasn't really been able to do that. That's why Napoli's wage bill is, I repeat this, the 5th highest of Serie A. It's, I think it's nearly a third that of Juventus.
Yep.
So when you put this in context, you know, you can say, oh, look, he's done a fabulous job. I would argue that he's done a fabulous job in balancing the books and finishing second and all this other stuff. but he hasn't shown the ability to go and grow anything at Napoli. What I would have done is I would have sat Carlo down and said, listen, we really need to get top 4, but the reality is Callejon and Mertens are going to be sold. I can't afford this. I understand if you don't want to be a part of it next year. In fact, I'm not going to renew you for next year. Let's have a go this season. Let's see what happens. Let's see where we go. And let's kind of make this work. And let's be fair to the players, and I'll let the players go that I need to let go. And that's it. And then, next year we won't have any money. We'll have to sell the best players. And if you want to go somewhere else, that's great.
Can I sort of throw in another element to this, which I'm finding really bothersome? And we've talked about on this podcast before, but suddenly seeing this rumour that Ibrahimovic might be on the agenda for January. And
this is what I mean.
It all feels so ill thought through. Like, why would you throw that into this mix? I mean, actually, this game against Genk, if it reminds us of anything positive, it's that Arik Milik is a potentially very good striker you've got there. Why would you upset that, create more mess? But
I thought the whole point was, with Sarri, it was like we weren't using the full squad. Let's bring in Ancelotti. If you didn't want to go to the next level, then Ancelotti was your wrong choice, because that's all. That's what he's good at.
There was
taking you to the next level.
In Il Mattino this morning, where it's a Neapolitan newspaper, where they said basically Ancelotti was a university professor trying to preside over a secondary school class.
Well, it's true. Either know your team or say, okay, I'm going to do a long-term project. Either invest in this long-term project and watch it grow and come to fruition, or accept that what you care about the most. But this is why not just go for a builder then after Sarri? Why go for Ancelotti?
But I think the thinking was, you look at the age profile of all these guys, right? Callejon and Mertens are 32, Koulibaly's 28,
Gattuso will have
Manolas is 28. There. No, but but he won't, because all these guys are going to leave.
Yeah. Well, then why not stick with Ancelotti and wait for them to leave?
I think until the end of the season, I think by all means, that's what he should have done. One other factor, if you believe in expected goals and analytics, I think it might be relevant, is they may be 7th in the table, but in terms of expected goal difference, they're 4th in the table. And I think they've played much better than their results. Yeah. So it would have been reasonable to imagine Napoli rising up the table. I mean, they've got Cagliari in front of them, teams like that, So I think, again, that's another missed opportunity on his part.
I think that's the only ambiguous part there is that, and the only bit where I can see the reason to replace him is that, yes, on the expected goals, I, in general, totally buy into that, but I think you have to put some of the reason they haven't been converting on those goals is that the mood of the team has not been good following this mutiny.
Yes, exactly.
And at what point does just making a change break that cycle possibly?
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.